7 o'clock, do we have a motion to open our meeting?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Hi, good evening, everyone. This is a meeting of the Finance Committee. It's Wednesday, February 12th, 2025. Tonight, we are meeting with a delegation from the school. Ms. Sarah Gomes from the school committee, Dr. Paula Bailey, our school superintendent, and Patrick McIntyre, our school business manager.
Somebody's behind the door.
That was Sarah. Hi.
Yeah, no, I said Sarah. I was like, wait a minute.
Which door?
I'm looking around. Yeah, so we're here to discuss the pending school project involving the elementary school building, and just looking to get some updates, any new developments.
So I'll hand out the presentation that we had at our school committee last evening. Here, actually, maybe I'll pass one down. If you don't mind. Am I sitting, standing, I don't know how we're doing this in this room. Yeah, so
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, Pat, before you start, for our school delegation, we have a new finance committee member, Mr. Phil Adams.
welcome.
Sorry.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, I'm not gonna go through the presentation necessarily. I know enough about it at this point to talk to you guys about what you have concerns about. As far as updates go, we received the investment grade audit on January 6th, which was considered the final. We've gone through it in length, but there are some components to the figures that we've yet to kind of release the information for that reason. So Eversource still owes us information on how much of an incentive they're going to fund this project by. And the reason being is the size of the project based on the energy efficiencies within it and the decarbonization component, if you will. They're customizing an incentive for us. And in order to do that, they've hired a technical analyst, to perform a technical analysis on the data that Train has presented, so that they have faith and can rely on the data that Train has presented in order to incentivize the project. So it's almost like a third party kind of auditing the information that was presented to us and then rewarding us with a custom incentive accordingly. So that number's still out there. We're supposed to have a call this Monday in regards to that. We needed to do a little more work, and that's been rescheduled for at some point next week. We should have figures. And what's happening is they really have their number. They can't share it with us until it works its way up corporate and gets approved for them to share it.
So at this point, we have no idea whether you're talking 1%, 50%?
It's going to be what I understand is the $300,000 to $500,000 range. And it's going to be benchmarked depending on how much we use in energy, or how much we save in oil, or how much, it's kind of as far as we go, the incentive will go. I don't want to speak to it too much more in case that I do misspeak, since it's not officially on the table yet.
So like 7 to 15% of the overall stage one cost? If it's at 300,000 to 500,000?
Well, so if we're looking at 4 million, yeah, that makes sense. And then the other missing component is the Green Communities grant that we applied for, up to $500,000. Again, we've been following up on what the delay is to get awards for those grants. In the past, it's been January. We were told it was going to be January again. It's lagged. We've reached out, and there's been nothing there. So obviously, those two figures could drastically drive the price down or keep it at the ceiling of the $4 million that we're anticipating. Other than that, the information has generally stayed the same. As far as the problems with the buildings, which direction we're looking to go, as far as the debt exclusion to fund the project, there's really no other way at this point in time. I've met with the town administrator, the town clerk, the moderator, the assessor, to start figuring out all those different components of when articles are going to be due, what the language needs to say, how is this going to affect the tax rate. Preliminary, off of a $4 million figure, I have it impacting the taxes at $18 per thousand. So if you have 18 cents per thousand.
It's $18 per thousand?
No, so the median home, from what I found in Acushnet, is somewhere between $400,000 to $450,000. So the tax implication would be around $70 to $80 a year if my math is correct. I don't want to be quoted yet until I can have the assessor look at that, because that's, that's their expertise, if you will.
So, question for you, you're talking about 4 million for stage 1?
No.
And that,
4 million is the project.
so we have no more 1 through 5?
There's components 1 through 5, but we're proposing them all at the same time, because it goes back to the idea that this was a comprehensive project put together to maximize incentives, to drive down the price, and to solve the overall problem. We can assume that by doing it in stages, maybe it will solve components of it, but the longer we delay and don't have that information without the experience and the actual evidence, we're putting ourselves at risk, and then the price of all of these other components are just gonna grow exponentially between now and 2, 3, 4, 5 years. And the incentives won't be there anymore.
I know two of the questions we had, one of them was, where do we stand with the warranty on the roof? I know we spent $500,000 just recently.
Yep.
Another, what, 600,000 maybe was coming up soon?
So the roof for this project was, studied by engineers, one, to support the equipment that they would be adding, and two, to make sure we wouldn't void the warranty through the roof. And essentially from the manufacturer in Mulehide, we got confirmation that as long as we use a certified Mulehide vendor, whether it's the guy that put the roof on our building or any other certified Mulehide vendor, the warranty will stay intact.
And that vendor uses all in that same $4 million?
Yes, yep, it's all built in and will be subcontracted accordingly by Train.
And I don't know if I'm skipping ahead or not, but I know one of the questions we asked was, annually, what are we looking at for maintenance cost? I know filters have to be expensive as hell, but what other type of, do we have licensing agreements that we have to put in for it? Other services we have to do from outside technicians? Is it gonna create more of a draw on our existing facilities, personnel for the town, for the school to upkeep these? I mean, all of that's information that we need before we can make an educated decision too.
Yeah, so a lot of that is disclosed in the investment grade audit to the extent where, they measure the amount of energy that we will save, but also that they're adding with this new equipment. They measure the amount of oil that we're using versus what we'll save by switching to electricity in some extent. The routine maintenance is going to be routine maintenance no matter what equipment exists or remad. That's a part of it. The building management system, which is your controls, is implemented once and that's it. Occasionally, like a computer, we're going to have software updates. They won't be of charge. And those systems will be maintained, we'll be trained on them, we get 40 hours of training for whoever we want to be able to understand and utilize that building management system. And then the air purification component of the equipment that we're adding actually extends the life of our filters that you mentioned, that we don't have to replace them nearly as regularly as we would. So there's a lot in the guts of the investment grade audit that we're anticipating to share soon once we kind of have our more intimate steering committee meetings, and then we get the engineers in the building to talk about that with this group, with the select board, with the public hearing.
Because I know we've all talked about it, not necessarily in regards to the school's project, but overall, there's concerns about going 100% electric, because at 100% electric, with what's happened with the electricity rates, it's a hell of a lot cheaper to use oil right now than it is electricity. Especially with Eversource charging us twice as much for delivery than for supply.
It's not incorrect to say that. Unfortunately, I guess whatever side you're on, the state is pushing to incentivize going electric, and that's where we would be able to afford a lot of this project is through that. The other piece that we have in the background that we've been working on for a couple of years, I don't have a ton of these, I wasn't sure if I was going to talk to them or not, is the Select project that was voted on at town meeting of 2023.
Was this the
It's the canopy, and actually it's extended because the smart incentives have changed. It makes the roof project more feasible. So actually, we presented this at the school committee last night with the intentions to sign a letter of intent in April, which is not legally binding. It just says, hey, we're going to work with you to try to figure out how we can get this project going. And they present PPA savings. So this will be a power purchase agreement. We don't own the equipment, we don't maintain the equipment. They're essentially leasing our real estate to put solar on the campus, to generate energy, to sell it to us at a discounted price. They're forecasting whether this is a prevailing wage project or not, and I'm not saying their forecast is accurate. They're assuming a 2.5% escalation rate in electricity over the next 25 years. But for the 8-year roof, they're saying over 25 years, this will generate or save us 1.7 million. And then on the Ford parking lot through the canopy, they're saying that could save us another 1.2. So we're looking at $3 million potentially in savings if we can move forward with this project.
Assuming 25 years, assuming
Over 25
the
years,
increase.
assuming the increases, exactly. So to your point of if we're using more energy, it would make sense to tie it with solar, which we have trained evaluate, and it's disclosed in the investment grade audit, but their model for the way that we procured it through this performance contracting would force us to own the asset, which it's not feasible for us. We don't have a big enough team, we don't have the expertise, and we don't want to be replacing equipment after 10, 15, 25 years. So this seems to be a better fit for us. And, you know, I'd like to bring Select back in to talk more about this, to see if this, you know, is in the appetite of the town and the school committee. And ultimately, again, that warrant went forward May 2023 with a yes vote. And the way it was written, the town would be the one signing and engaging in the contract with Select.
So if they went through this, and you may or may not know this, what are we looking at for solar in terms of generating for your monthly use? Do we have an average of what the expectation
The
is?
kilowatt hours that we would be consuming versus what this would, I haven't.
I didn't know if they give you some estimate or not.
The biggest piece with solar is when it's behind the meter, you control the demand charge, and the demand charge is what they kill you with on your bill. It's the highest rate of electricity for the largest 15-minute interval over the month, and they kind of, not tax you on it, but that's where they raise the fees and get you with everything else. So by going behind the meter, we actually control the demand, and we keep our rates flat, and we keep our energy kind of level, that we don't have to pay those taxes of energy, if you will. So that's one of the benefits. And then in addition, again, you know, I can't say for sure if these annual figures are enough to cover our bill, or if it's going to be surplus and it's going to be money in the bank or not. But that's certainly going to be analyzed. But regardless or not, I see it as an opportunity for the town and the school alike, when we're, you know, in another year of minimal growth, minimal revenue. We kind of have to explore everything here. You can't use this savings to say reduce the debt exclusion. They have to kind of come hand in hand to do a debt exclusion, and then you have this, and this maybe, you know, reduces the operating budget to some extent, but the debt exclusion has to exist. You know, Jamie, Mr. Kelly can talk more about the debt exclusion, and if we ban it for 6 months to a year, and then bond it, and then after 10 years, you can send your bond out to market, and that could change the landscape of what the tax impact would be. But again, that's all forward-facing at this point. The $70 to $80 per $450,000 median home value, it's based on year one, which is the highest principal and interest, and then gradually it would decrease over time as you pay down your principal. So the hardest hit would be the $70, $80 a year for that.
How many years did you project for
It
that?
would be a 20-year.
20-year?
And again, that's tied to the procurement, and that those agreements can only extend for 20 years at a maximum.
I'm not up on the solar project, but is that roof mounted or is it?
So both. So AES would be roof mounted, and again, they have to do all the structural engineering to make sure that it can take the weight, the structure. They would maintain the warranties, or we wouldn't move forward with the project. And then the other
It's the problem,
is...
those like membrane roof and.
Yeah, but again, this is what they're in the business of doing, and this is what they deal with. Colleges, universities, high schools, middle schools, so on and so forth. So it's not unfamiliar to them. And then the middle school is an actual steel structure over the parking lot. And again, it's not our equipment, we're not expected to touch it, clear the snow off of it, any of those things, it's all on them. And a lot of that you can tweak and change once you get to the contract period.
And which parking lot was it? It was the old parking lot, right?
It's the one right between the two schools,
Yeah.
closest to the tennis courts, if you
What I
will.
call the old parking lot, right? The original as opposed to the new one up front, closer to the street.
Right.
And we're still, as a school committee, vetting all of this out, so this is not a done deal, we still want more information, we still have a lot more questions to ask. So don't think that this is a done deal.
No,
The school committee's asking.
right, and again, and we can't, even if it was a vote yes from the school committee, we can't move forward with the select board meeting to be the ones to execute the contract, so we're just reviving the conversation, again, trying to get creative with opportunity in this town to offset costs.
Would there be any expense to us for the solar part of the project?
None.
None, nothing out of pocket? So, and then the third party that's doing this audit, is their assessment going to be contingent on the solar panels going on the roof? Or is it going to be done, say we're not doing solar, and they're going to do an assessment just based on the savings, potential savings with heat pumps?
You're talking
Because
about
that's
sources of
unknown. Yeah.
It doesn't have anything to do with the solar, it has to do with the equipment and, you know, utilizing more
Just
less
systems.
energy. Yeah, exactly. Building efficiencies, they're measuring all of that.
And Patrick, you said, you know, we do this and they're gonna sell us the electricity at a cheaper rate, right? What's the contract for that? Like, is that part negotiated or known yet?
So it's forecasted here, again, they're giving you a column here where they're saying grid delivered electricity cost and
Yeah.
15 cents and change, right? And then they're escalating it at 2.5% over 25 years. So who knows if in 25 years, 27 cents is for electricity or not. But ultimately, you move over to the column where they say solar PPA rate, and they're saying regardless of what your grid rate would have been, we're signing a deal with you to sell it at 4 cents per kilowatt hour.
So that's a given.
Once we sign the contract.
Right,
The
right.
logistics are worked out, and they find out if this is gonna be prevailing wage based on our council's decision or not. There's a lot of gray area there. Behind the meter, there's ways around making it a prevailing wage project. Otherwise, if it's general construction, usually it's prevailing wage. I'm gonna let the lawyers decide
Deal with
that.
that, yeah.
So that changes the cost, but ultimately, again, this is what they're forecasting. You know, if we tell them they have to do certain things, you know, clear out the snow, make sure that, you know, X, Y, and Z are happening, they're gonna increase that rate because it's gonna cost them more money.
So if we're looking at it, you say it's 2.5 cents per kilowatt hour.
2.5% increase.
5% increase, I'm sorry,
Yeah.
per kilowatt hour. And what happens with the energy that's produced in abundance of what you use? Do we have battery backups to utilize some of this?
So that's the discussion we talked about initially too, in 2023, is having a battery backup. It's sort of been decided that, again, that's just not an equitable piece for us to do. We would be able to bank that energy and then use it at a later point, but there's still so much unknowns about batteries that size, recycling them, useful life. The incentives around the batteries aren't there like they were a few years ago, so it's all been considered, I guess.
In my opinion, having solar myself and paying 1.7 cents on an increase, the town's getting screwed because the years, months, weeks that you're gonna produce the most energy out of that is when your school is not
Open.
filled and opened. So you're gonna be paying for electricity in the cold months where you're getting almost no usage out of it. And they're gonna be banking all the money that your solar panels are gonna be producing in the warm months where they get to just cash it in.
Yeah, so I mean, it's a very good point. I don't know the answer to whether or not, because it's behind the meter, there's any.
I'm just telling you, 2.5%
At the
is,
end of the day, we're gonna use energy, and we're gonna be able to afford it at a cheaper rate than what we pay now.
that's when they're taking your average monthly use and passing that throughout a year to give you an average for it. The problem is your average monthly use is not gonna be there in August when they're getting it. It's gonna be the most in the cold winter months when you're not producing it. So your expenses are gonna be better, more than what they're showing you as an average because of that. If you were in Florida, it was a little bit different, yeah, but up here,
Again,
I'm just telling you.
Fair point, you know, it's something I propose to select to hear more about. I mean, I do know we run our schools all year round, not to the capacity where we have 400 students in each building, but we have camps, we have rental facilities, you know, administration works out of them, custodians are working every day, lights are turning on every day, the whole nine, so.
It is, but you know your energy usage is much more in the winter months
Oh,
than
of
it is in the
course,
summer.
but right now, that's via oil, not electricity.
Right.
So the whole landscape changes with this train project and with solar and, dependent, if you will.
I'm just, your heat is gonna be running on electricity in the winter months.
If the train project goes through.
If the train, well, right. So now you've got not only your regular usage, you've got the increase based on your heat. And again, these are in months when you're not gonna be generating any revenue through your solar. So it's something that you seriously have to look at in terms of whatever contract you're looking at, because 2.5%,
No, I agree. Again, we're looking at any opportunity to save a buck. That's what it comes down to. And, with no liability, it's an option for us, for the town.
because Bob Hinckley, who works in solar, I'm sure will
Yeah,
put that over
absolutely.
himself. I wish he was here tonight.
With the heat pumps, we would still be potentially using the oil, correct? Because at a certain temperature, those...
So we talked about that. So the heat pumps are graded for 0 degrees to be able to turn on, but it's more efficient for the boiler to get the temperature up to X, and then the heat pumps to kick on. So that's all in the measurement analysis that Train has done too, and including the investment grade audit. So that's why it's not a full decarbonization project, because we're not shutting off the boilers and forgetting them for good. It's a balance of what's more efficient and cost effective, and it's the boilers will kick on to, let's say, 20 degrees, and then the heat pumps take over and get you the rest of the way. And then what's good about that is if, power or anything else ever fails, we still have the boilers as a backup to heat.
Sorry, I feel like I've kind of taken over all the questions.
No, that's fine.
Is this pricing
Okay,
including the leaks that were found in the walls and stuff?
It does not, it does not.
So that's a separate issue
That's a
altogether.
construction project that's not energy related as far as, again, the procurement goes.
I was gonna say, it's not energy related, but the problems solving was all tied into moisture that was coming in from the leaks.
Yeah.
So if all we're doing is paying for an HVAC system to remove that moisture, but we're not stopping it, then we're looking at a project that's not complete.
Well, they're addressing the building envelope with insulation and changes of that extent, but they're not removing, that project's looking like it needs, 30 linear feet of a wall removed, be reflashed, and put back together just to...
Is the intent to fix this before this goes in?
Well, so that's the $1 million question really is, we're not experts to design what the solution is to that. So we've been quoted for a design build process on that would cost $40,500 just for them to design, have someone bid it, and then oversee the project through fruition if we were to move forward with it. So that $40,000 doesn't involve construction. Construction, we expect to be north of six figures, north of $100,000 for just that component. And again, this is a problem that was disclosed in 2004, and it's been 20 years now since then, so, it's just, I heard you guys say on your finance committee the other night about the council on aging HVAC issue, which was, quoted for $36,000 2 years ago, nothing was done. Now you're paying 10 for one piece, and it's, sometimes you gotta spend 100 to save 300 in the future, I think you said. So it's that, but, with bigger numbers, unfortunately, and we're kind of getting to the reckoning day where it could be a school at some point, and we see that with Old Colony, and that's 100 million plus, and we know we can't afford that, so. We're trying to preserve our buildings through these projects, that's the idea is, address our needs, address our concerns, and preserve our buildings. Right now, we have, you've heard me say it 100 times, 50 dehumidifiers plugged in, 50 air purifiers plugged in. We have our custodians working overtime to empty all these units, replace the filters in all these units, just so we don't have that accident that happened, a year ago. I lost the timeline at this point, a year and a half ago, where we were able to combat it with ESSER funds without costing the town a single dollar, but if that happens, over $300,000, if that happens again, where are we gonna go for that? How long will the building be shut down? How much will it take over and decay? And
But
then
you said that the
we're
accident,
fixing it.
what do you mean accident?
I'm just calling it that, I don't know if that's the proper term, but where the humidity, infiltrated the school to the point where we had mold.
No, I wanted to understand, when you said accident, what exactly, do we know what caused it exactly?
The humidity, yep.
And how did the humidity get to that level? Did
It
some,
was just, it was the season, I think we had the highest humidity levels in Massachusetts that year, and, just with all the components and the leaks,
Yeah.
and the system's not working and being controlled where they should be, the classrooms got humid. Still to this day, I invite you guys, you can walk into a classroom, one classroom's heated, it's 90 degrees, the one next to it's 60 degrees, and it's because of our building management system controls that just aren't working properly, hadn't been updated, hadn't been maintained. We talked about the ductwork hadn't been cleaned in multiple years, and just routine maintenance had been neglected over all this time, and it all came together. And they can't isolate it to one exact thing, but humidity was the driving factor to piece all this together.
So
The
Patrick, I have a
ductwork
question.
was cleaned. I know that. The ductwork was cleaned at the elementary school.
Okay.
What year was that?
So probably before the pandemic, around the pandemic. During the pandemic, over $50,000 was spent getting the rooftop units at the elementary school back in order. And sealant for the bricks was purchased, and that was supposed to have been a project. I don't know if that was ever completed.
It was never applied.
But there was, I know that I purchased drums of sealant to seal the bricks. And like I said, I don't know if that had ever been done, but the materials were purchased.
So they were never
and-
utilized?
That's good.
So, in terms of like the building in 2004, so how did you become aware of that? Because this is, quite frankly, the first time I'm hearing of this. I wasn't there in 2004, but I had never seen anything addressing leaks in the building.
So how did we hear about the leaks in the
You
building?
said, yeah, that you've known about it since 2004.
The closet leaks, the water infiltration of the gym closet. I filed through records and I can send it to the committee. It's dated and it says water infiltration over the gym closet, exactly where we're having the issue.
Right, but you're not saying like through, I misunderstood, I thought you meant like through the bricks, or...
Yeah, the water is coming in and hitting the bricks, and because the flashing isn't kicking it out to the roof the right way, it was constructed
Was it
incorrectly.
a report from somewhere, or, from a...
No, so how did we identify that?
Correct,
Oh,
yeah.
we just paid through our use of facilities fund to contract an engineer to come out. They removed 3 bricks just over one of the previous breaks, and we have a full report on it and documented pictures and everything.
so if it wasn't constructed properly, is there any sort of recourse we can take against the person who installed it?
No, not after all these years.
It's too late.
Yeah.
And I don't, again, I wasn't here during that time, but I remember that, I think the contractor, there was some trouble with the contractor.
During the
Reading that
renovations?
just during the renovations.
Yeah, I've heard the same
There may
stories.
have been, they may have walked off the job, I'm not
Yeah.
sure. That was a long time ago, and there was a lot of difficulty and much to the extent that it was very difficult to find any as-built, any plans, numerous contacts with the architect. It was, anytime anything was tried to be done, I'm sure you found that, it became very difficult because there just wasn't any records.
Yeah, and I don't want you to feel that I'm pointing fingers. I'm just making general
And
statements of
those
the
things,
information I've
just so that,
recovered.
the board members and the general public that may be watching, some of these things had been addressed so that, it's not thought that the building wasn't taken care of, but those things had been addressed, like I said, rooftop units, the air ducts were cleaned, and like I said, the sealant was bought, but whether or not it was applied, I don't,
I
I
know
don't
those
know.
drums
That
still sit
happened.
in the back room.
So here's a question, why? Because we sit back and we talk about what's preventable and what isn't preventable, and if we're spending money to a fix and that's never even attempt it.
So the engineers essentially confirmed that this sealant wouldn't have done anything. Why it hasn't been applied is, that's a guess to me. What I've seen, currently we don't have a facilities director. What I've seen when we did have a facilities director is there were too many other issues that we were trying to address to be able to spend the time outside in the perfect weather conditions with the right gear, without wind, without people around, to be able to spray the sealant correctly and safely. And that's what it came down to,
We have asked, why do we even bother buying it? Again, before, but this is the frustration when you sit back and look
So
at the waste right there.
so this is why we went about this project as studious as could be, if you will, through this performance contracting, so that they had to audit every aspect of our building, measure and verify and analyze every piece of equipment that uses energy, the useful life of the boilers, the age of all this equipment, and put it all together to propose a comprehensive solution, so we know we're checking all the boxes, and it's not just we did it, and now let's wait to see what breaks next, you know what I mean?
Right, but my concern too is the fact that we're still not addressing the water coming into the building, and we're saying, well, we're checking all the boxes. We're not. In my opinion, let me finish this. In my opinion, we need to stop the leak coming into the building before we start treating for humidity in the air.
Well, so, I'd like to do both, to be honest, but with the controls and the systems that would be added, whether there's water in the building or not, the system would sense to heat or to cool and remove that humidity from the air. So that's how it's designed.
To that point,
But it doesn't get it when it's in the walls, because there's no way for it to suck the moisture out. So if we were dealing with a mold issue before of water inside the walls, we're gonna be dealing with the same issue.
So where, I'd have to show you, but where it's coming in at the wall meeting the roof seam of the closet, it's coming down and it's trickling down right on the concrete bricks inside the wall. Again, they opened that up, there was no visible mold, all the weatherproofing was there, it's just the water's being redirected inside instead of outside. So it's mainly on a tiled floor and sealed painted brick, if you will, but yes, it's not ideal. I'm not disagreeing with you.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but weren't we talking last year about multiple areas, multiple rooms of mold in the school?
Unrelated to the gym closet roof leak, yes.
Okay.
That was strictly related to just humidity in the building due to lack of controls, lack of,
Okay.
so
I thought it was, I'm sorry, I thought it was presented based on that being the leak cost.
no.
So the cost to do the building envelope was about 800K to $1 million, right?
I believe it was $1 million for both schools. Let me just look here. Sorry, it was about 300,000 for both schools. So right here is all the improvements, last slide. So this is specific to ADS, I believe, 130.
So that's taking care of all the structural issues.
Not structural. We have that report, and I believe we have shared that one, but we can again. But that's like if your utility provider came into your home and did your energy audit and looked at your windows, your doors, massive, your attic to insulate and find all these holes. So they found, again, where walls meet roofs and where windows meet are installed, they found gaps in air, and you could see it, blowing the insulation and things like that. At the thresholds of our exterior doors, there's improvements to be made. They talked about sealing the windows, which, it's endless.
So let's say all
That's not
that's
including the wall issue.
That would not include the construction.
Let's say that all that's done, the concrete is sealed, because they're gonna end up doing a sealant, aren't they? I think this company's gonna do a sealant treatment on the concrete.
I don't believe so,
No, I thought that was part of the scope of the project, on the outside of the building.
I don't believe so, no.
I remember seeing something about that at some point, reading through some of the documentation.
I can circle back to it.
But anyway, so let's say all that's taken care of, the building envelope, right? Was there ever anything looked at as far as, because I know it's a moisture and humidity problem, as far as putting like a whole building dehumidification system in, minus all these heat pumps and all this fancy technology, was that ever thought of?
I think we talked about that with the decusant,
And just taking care of that, because that's gonna, because then you're not having all these individual dehumidifiers in all these rooms. You have some giant system that's gonna dehumidify the air throughout the building. and you're not doing, yeah, it's not gonna decarbonize stuff, but is that what the real ultimate goal is here?
So the analysis was, either solution, we're not gonna have a dehumidifier in every room. Again, the cooling would be used to combat the humidity in the air. But the analysis was with incentives that are geared towards this, the alternative would actually be more expensive and not as effective.
It would be more expensive?
Because there's no incentives towards adding a dehumidification
Do
system.
we know that? Like, did we ever research a contractor to say, hey, what would this cost to put a whole building dehumidification system in?
I mean, I'm relying on the engineers and again, what's been out there.
I know, I just, this is some costly technology, and
And here's a question for you too. We're looking at a solar program possibly of 25 years. What's the useful life that we're getting out of the heat pumps? I'm asking, do we know?
I think it was 20 years actually.
Okay, so
Which is
are you prepared
generally,
to sit there and say that we've got 20-plus years of useful life left in both our school buildings?
I think with a project like this, we'll absolutely preserve that elementary school to be able to get 20 more years out of
That's
it.
the elementary, but we're talking middle school too.
Middle school, we don't have half the problems that there's nothing being considered as far as equipment upgrades for the middle school right now, other than a building management system, because the individual components seem to be working fine and well enough. But in my opinion, Ford Middle School is in a lot better shape than the elementary school.
I just want some assurances that if the town decides that they want to go through with the upgrades, that we're getting 20, 25 years of useful life out of the upgrades, otherwise,
Yeah, I mean, just generally, the scope and this type of equipment, they classify as 20-year useful life.
And they did address that at the meeting last night. So if you want to rewatch the school committee meeting, they did address that.
I specifically asked that question to make sure that this was not not a 10-year thing or a 5-year thing for millions of dollars, right? So we all want to be responsible. So they had said that, they are looking at 20-plus years. And then my other question was, with technology changing so fast, in 5 years down the road, are these computer systems even going to work? Is the microchip still going to be there? Exactly, and that was my concern as well as other committee members, and that was also addressed, with the software updates. They work closely with us, they've been around for 15-plus years.
Those chips, there won't be artificial intelligence by then.
Again, they are still working closely with us. Right.
Maybe.
So again, that was a concern of ours as well.
Yeah. Speaking about salary, so the training that they're going to give you guys, so is this like going to be an existing person that's there? Or are you going to need to hire somebody full-time to maintain the system going forward?
It'll be our facilities, including myself, And,
Because
the technology we have now, it can be on your cell phone, it can be on my couch and go, I got no way, and, something needs to be tweaked, and, we're gonna cross-train as many individuals as we can. I don't think they put a limit on it.
Like maintaining the system going forward, are they maintaining the system?
There's an option for them to maintain it, there's an option for them to just, to inform us what needs to be maintained. With the contract with them, no matter what, they have to do measurement and verification every year. So they have to come back in and look at the data of the system to make sure it's working properly, and we guarantee it to be working within a certain extent. If it's not, they are liable to make those changes and tweaks and maintenance updates, so it's working as they had projected, if you will.
Okay.
They also talked about coming back if there were new staff people. If that facilities director left 7 years from now, they would come back and train whenever we needed it.
Okay. That would be included as part of this contract?
Is part of it.
Okay.
Is that your understanding, Patrick?
Yeah, that's accurate.
That's how the former BMS worked also, was on the phone, they trained, they would come back several times a year for preventative maintenance and take care of any things with the older system that we had. How is the dehumidifier that's in the AES in the yellow wing,
In the ceiling.
in the ceiling? Because when you mentioned that, I thought of that there.
It runs, but we still have individual dehumidifiers that fill up in all those
In
classrooms.
that same area.
Yeah.
But I know that was hoped to be part of a solution to
Yeah,
address.
again, I think it's a combination of things that aren't working in unison, right? You know, we have our exhaust fans pulling and pushing air, but at what rate and under what control? And if it's not doing what it's supposed to do and there's nothing to gauge it, you know, the dehumidifier is running and it's using all this energy, but we're still pulling in a little bit of air because it's not sucking in the right amount and pushing the right amount out. So the idea with the building envelope improvements are to give you a controlled environment, to seal as much as possible that can be under your control, and then condition the air with heat or cool to be able to control the environment.
So,
So that's where we get back to comprehensive. It's really, you know, envelope, and then you need the controls to be able to work the new equipment, and you need the new equipment to be able to work in capacity to address these issues.
so this is gonna basically put AC in AES.
So yes, it will be able to cool, but again, the model is built not to create an environment where we're, you know, teaching and learning in 67 degrees. It's only going to turn on to a point where it needs to combat humidity.
Yeah, so I guess that's the question. So come in the
Yes.
summertime, our costs are gonna go up because this system is gonna kick in.
It's going to combat the humidity all summer. as
So
long
what
as it needs
temperature
to.
do we need to?
Again, that's disclosing the report. I'd prefer you guys to hear that
Okay.
from the engineers, but I believe that the humidity point was somewhere in the 70s.
They'll make a set point, the
Yeah.
engineers will make a set point that it should be set on.
Yeah.
But sometimes that's too warm for people,
Mhm.
and
You override
so,
it and,
you know, you learn through experience that when you override it, it created a bigger problem, because then in the summertime, to override it, to cool it,
creates more
it
problems.
created more problems and jacked up the energy bill, the electricity bill, because at one point in time, it seems counterintuitive, the AC and the heat were running
Right.
at the same
But
time.
that's just it. So
And there was a 50,000 plus 1 month energy bill. So
they're
that's-
designing the
So they do it,
solution
so they-
to avoid that,
Correct.
to the point where we've sent them our schedules, our facility use schedules, so they know when basketball is coming in at 5 o'clock and they stay till 9, to control it to that level, and that's what they're gonna do. They're gonna have it all set on times and set points in the morning with enough time to get it where it needs to be for school to start, without allowing it to get too humid or too.
So when you're saying the set points are being adjusted because
They-
bodies in the room?
Because
Yeah.
of use, because of temperature.
But it's not-
Because of seasons, you know,
Yeah, but
less
we're not running it so it creates a 70-degree.
Nope, just to combat the humidity. And again, they measure and verify that. They have to measure and verify that annually. You know,
What about like-
sure, someone could
So
abuse
really
it if they have it on their phone and they can override, or they're gonna see that, we're gonna get reports on that, we're gonna get alerted of that. It's not gonna be everybody's got their own individual thermostat that they're feeling sweaty this day, they can bump it up. That's not gonna be the case.
Jamie, you had a question?
Yeah. I've been listening and you've been talking about details about the project and everything else. And it occurred to me, you've got a bunch of experts working on the project. There are a whole bunch of experts working on the big dig and the tunnels and everything. And the experts were wrong. What guarantee do we have if the people who are presenting this are wrong and it doesn't solve any of the problems?
I mean, I feel like you could say that about anything, but what I can tell you is,
Do we have a guarantee from them?
within the contract language, I don't think they can say, we promise you 20 more years out of this building or anything like that.
Not 20 years.
They can look at the data to say.
But the guarantee of here is what is wrong, and what we are proposing as experts will fix
So
it.
they're gonna guarantee that humidity will not be a problem in the school anymore, and they do that through their measurement and verification process
But-
and the specs that they put in place.
basically, the problem that they're trying to solve is there language that the town will get that guarantees that their analysis of what the problem is, plus their analysis of what the fix is correct.
I can ask specifically that.
Well, I would think it would be just the adjustment of temperatures, because that's how you get humidity. So if there's humidity in the building and we increase the heat.
You're
That's a
making
guarantee in the
assumptions.
contract.
You're making assumptions. I'm saying, you've got someone here who's telling you what the problem is, and they're offering you a solution. What if their analysis of what the problem is wrong?
Well, before we got to this,
Right.
we had four environmental groups come through our buildings, study our buildings,
Engineers.
and they all determined that the issue was humidity.
So Jamie, is your concern that there's like a lack of a owner's project manager, that it's the person that's
No, I mean,
developing
it's
it?
basically, I don't trust
doing
the
it
experts.
correct. That
Well, the
is
experts
not
are paid for by what they get to sell it.
Yeah, and they're paid to define the problem that their project
So where
solves.
that's vetted out is the consultant that we've hired is looking at all this. Eversource, we just talked about, is conducting an in-depth technical analysis of all the data that Trent has proposed. I mean, they've asked for essentially everything, every single report. And then DOER has to approve the project based on the measures as well, so.
I'm jaded.
So you do have a separate consultant then?
Correct.
Other than Train?
Correct.
From Beacon.
And it's got a 20-year life,
The
approximately.
equipment, yep. And that's just.
Is that 20-year, or is that it works at its optimal level for 20 years?
That's 20 years with routine maintenance, like anything else, you know?
That's
We
like
get what we put into
You'll
it
live an
type
extra
thing.
15 years if you take
Some
care of
people
it.
get 2 years out of a brand new car, others get 35, you know, it's how we take care of things,
There's no guarantee.
so, you know,
It's, basically, it's also like, at one point, they said solar panels last X number of years. Then it's, oh no, solar panels last X number of years, but the optimal
you're right.
production of energy out of the solar panel is 1/3 that time.
So let me ask you, is the solution to do nothing?
No.
And wait for the optimal piece to come, which is never gonna come because technology.
No, I'm not saying that, it's to try to protect ourselves legally and with as much warranties and as much legalities as possible.
I know in my solar contract, if the panels produce below a certain threshold, then they're obligated to replace them.
So, again, we're mixing projects here. The solar project, it's in their best interest to replace the panels when technology improves because they're making money off of it.
I mentioned solar because that's what Jim's talking about.
Yeah, I just mentioned solar because I know that technology has changed so quickly, and what was 5 years ago is not now.
I mean, again, we have 20-year boilers in our buildings that, sure, we can rip them out and say they're ineffective and inefficient, but.
No, you've got to have the boilers because.
No, I'm saying we can get new ones that are more efficient, but at what cost, you know what I mean?
Well-
Where do we draw the line, I guess?
Well, it's also, I'd rather have a slant six engine that is not built anymore because it's a lot better than the crap we get now, but.
And will run forever.
Yeah, it'll run forever, but I'm trying to just say, and I'm not saying you haven't done it, but we've got to make sure that every guarantee possible we can get from these people we get.
So the contract, again, even on this project, will need to be voted on to enter into contract at town meeting, and I imagine the language will be, executed by the select board, which means, they'll all have a chance to look at it, school committee will, town council, our own council if we want to, schools council. we have to get there first, we need the ability to fund the project before we look at what the contract is. And then if we get there where the vote is to fund it, but we can't execute a contract that we agree on, then guess what? There's no debt exclusion, there's no contract, there's no new equipment.
And the debt exclusion's for 20 years.
Correct.
And the warranties on the project are for 20 years.
Like a roof.
And, but the question is, in that 20-year period, how much is the equipment, the system, et cetera, degrade over the last, let's say, 10 years? And
Well, again,
are we going to have to replace it at some point while we're still paying
the key point,
for the bonding?
the key point on that is they're responsible for the guarantee that they give us through the measurement and verification. So in year 20, they still have to be able to measure and verify that the system is working how it was in year 1. And they're responsible for that guarantee, which means the associated costs. Also, once we get to a contract, if we do, it's fixed firm pricing. So what you see is what you get. Anything above, if someone comes in and puts tariffs on all the equipment, guess what? Guess who's on the hook for that? Train. Fixed firm pricing.
As of,
If they start opening things up and they find all sorts of things wrong that they weren't able to capture initially, they're on the hook.
and you're in the hook. If
They build
need it-
contingencies into this 4.2, it's like, get ourselves, but
They're in the hook if they need a piece of equipment and it's not made anymore, so they've got to put a different piece of equipment in.
So
That's a question that I had as well, and Train makes their own equipment, so they're able to do things like that, like they will create a piece.
We work with them right now.
Okay, so again, that was Jane, my same concern is what's happening 10 years from now? What's happening 15 years from now when this equipment is obsolete and you need a part that fits into a square peg and you only have a round one? And like I said, they assured us that they had the equipment to
right,
do
and
it.
let's face it, right, that's also, the other side of things. I was gonna say, oh, well, they're doing it all right. Obviously, they wanna sell their equipment with this project too, but in the scope of the project, what we procured was open architecture. So they had to evaluate all equipment, all controls. They've done projects where they haven't used their own equipment, that they've used Siemens controls, Honeywell, this, that, and the other thing. So it's all been analyzed, and they've put the best project forward in their eyes, and in the engineer's eyes, and our consultant's eyes for us. We talk about good, better, best, good, better, best. And they looked at geothermal to the point of building a power plant in the
That's
kitchen.
my next question.
And it was exorbitant costs. If the town could have afforded it, sure, you could say, let's build that, and all of this would cost us nothing moving forward, but, it was, crazy money, that just doesn't make sense. That's why you see it tied to new buildings. When they're building new schools now, they tie it geothermal with those because they're excavating the entire site, and they can put all the components together versus you don't really retrofit buildings with geothermal if you don't have the money, it's not cost effective. So they've looked at everything, and this is the solution.
I'm just worried about the project in general. I don't think it's going to be helpful to say, but I'm in the middle of, we just bid a $150 million building where I work, municipal building, and it's doing geothermal. And I've been touring a lot of public safety buildings, and every single one has an absolute nightmare of an HVAC system, and that's in new construction. So I'm sure we're in a massive problem.
Has Train installed them?
No matter what we do. I don't know who the installers are, but, I mean, look at the police station. If you go there right now, the building's 10 years old. It took a couple of years, and they have massive mold problems.
Well, so again,
In general, it's...
if you're procuring this through general construction, they're building, installing, and they're leaving. Through this, they're responsible to guarantee efficiency.
Yeah, I'm not saying I'm against it. I'm just saying...
Oh, no, but it's important to decipher, because we could just go 30B and contract this as construction. They come in, they install, they go out, and then we're on the run. But this, they have to come back every year, measure, verify, and guarantee. So, they're going to be on the hook. Again, fixed firm pricing, they find a problem, it's on them. Their systems have to work as they dictate them to us before we sign a contract.
We know we have to do something, because we've had children who are sick, we've had staff sick, and the town has paid workers' comp in this case. So, and we have a Band-Aid solution right now with all these dehumidifiers running in every single room. It's just not efficient.
I don't think anybody's against it, I just think
Yeah.
we're trying to make sure
Right.
that this is financially
Right.
correct, the right thing, and make sure we're not cutting corners, and we're gonna come back, you guys are gonna come back at us in 10 years, oh, we need to fix this now.
Right.
Cross the Ts, dot the Is, make sure that this is the right thing, because if we're gonna put a tax burden on our residents, we need to sit there and say, yep, we did our vetting, this has to happen.
Yes,
On top
totally.
of the massive tax increase everybody got this
Right,
year.
because now we're looking at potentially, Old Colony building a new school, so there's another, potential,
And we're trying to avoid that.
yeah, so.
You know.
Well, that was my question about useful life, because,
Yeah.
if I'm still here in 20 years, I don't want to hear about, well, we need a new school right away. Because we're investing now, we're investing for some long-term, especially with the 20 year.
No, and just, on that, let's go that extreme, right? How long does it take to get to a point where you're building a new school? It takes 10 years to
Yeah.
get into that, to be able and be ready to break ground. So those conversations might happen well before the system starts to fail, but it's because of proper planning, right? It's
I understand what you're saying.
It's unfortunate, because again, I tune into the meetings and I hear what's going on, I talk to different department heads, and we have failed infrastructure all over the town, right? It's no one's fault, it's just, we need to focus on some sort of capital planning here, and how we're gonna remedy these fixes, so we're not always reactionary. Let's get to the problem before it causes a disaster, instead of putting out fires.
That's the problem too, is it can't all be capital planning, because it has to be operational planning.
Yeah.
Because we're in a bind this year because of operational planning that was not done well over the past couple of years. But that can be a discussion for when we're talking about something other than this. I do have two questions. On page 6, you've got everything checked except air purification measures for the middle school. Is that an oversight, or are we not doing any air purifications in the middle school?
Page 6, sorry. This was what they investigated. These are everything that they investigated. So there's no current need that we've identified for air purification in the middle school, so there was no investigation. We have new events in the middle school that there's nothing you can tie to air purification with the existing equipment. So there was nothing to investigate, if you will. Outside of we have the rabbit purifiers. But this is them telling you, they assess the lighting in both schools for efficiency, building envelope, building maintenance systems, insulation, the walk-in freezers and refrigerators, and I'd like to talk about that.
Yeah, that was my other question.
Yeah.
Because it says that it's all funded via food service program.
Yes.
And you already have?
Yes.
Okay. So none of that's going to be on the bond?
Correct, but this is a critical difference to make, because this project could be misunderstood and tied together as one, that if the debt exclusion fails now, there's no article on entering into a contract with Train, so on and so forth. We would still need to enter into a contract with Train in order to afford the refrigeration units for the walk-ins, the freezers and refrigerators. So 5 across the both schools, they would all be on their useful life. I think they're original. I don't know if you can speak to
They
to that.
probably are. Yeah, they probably are.
So again, we've been responsible, past and present, with the food service funds that we get for reimbursement on breakfasts and lunch, that we can afford that project without tapping into any town money or any taxpayer money. And we would like to do that, but it's critical that we would get that vote of support to still enter into a contract with Train, at least if it was singularly just for this project.
Okay. So this project can happen regardless?
As long as
It's just a
we
matter of
get
as long as you
the
get the
contract.
Right, but if we enter the contract, it's already paid, there's no additional resources needed? No. Okay.
It's been planned internally by us.
That's how I read it, I just want to make sure I was reading it correctly.
And I guess, let me backtrack. Technically, the school committee could still enter into contract with Train for 3 years, but that would reset this whole process. If we entered into 20 and this project failed and matters got worse, we would still have the opportunity to go back to them and say, hey, we're in year 10 right now, our 20-year contract is, we want to revisit that project, and we wouldn't have to go through the procurement and all of that all again. So there would be savings to, it would make sense to try to at least get a 20, so that if we wanted to use it, we could. If we didn't, we didn't,
What years were those schools constructed?
1960.
The elementary was 1971, and then it was redone, I'm going to say, what,
2002.
2002?
Yeah, I was there, yeah.
And then the middle school was before that, the original part, and the
But there was some renovations, right?
At the same time.
Same 2002, same contractor.
But it's much older than the elementary school, which was built in 71.
That's why I'm surprised there's no air quality problem in the middle school.
Correct, it doesn't make
That's
sense.
the older building.
Right, it does, and
The design is really kind of funky in the elementary school compared to the middle school.
maybe the difference, like you said, Patrick, is the univents in the middle school, and there's no
Versus,
univents in the
yeah.
elementary school, it's all rooftop units.
What's the
And there's not a
Ford,
lot of windows in the elementary in a lot of the rooms compared to the middle school.
what's the Ford Middle School's HVAC system? What's the, how is that system working out?
So,
I mean, we're gonna have to do this again in another 5 years, 10 years?
again, the analysis hasn't spoken to that. It would be upgrading the control system so that we can actually control what's going on. But the equipment is serviceable, it's working. They looked at it, they didn't see any need to, significantly replace any major components. So just upgrading, a control system, which, that's not unheard of. People keep existing equipment, upgrade controls.
Yeah, I mean, the building side, yeah.
It was upgraded at least once, probably most recently. in
So
the
you're
past
saying
8
the
years,
older
so-
building, the older
The
equipment
BMS
works
system.
better than the newer?
Well, so again, we would have to go down the timeline to know when the equipment in the middle school was replaced. When the construction took place, as far as the building goes, but I don't know how old, the univents or the different HVAC units that are in the gymnasium or whatever are, is there are different pieces.
So is this gonna help us out when we have our town meeting in the late spring and it's like 90 degrees in that gym?
As long as the set point tells it to.
So Patrick, some of my concerns with this, is the reliability of this high-tech system, right? How long have heat pumps been around? This technology,
I'm not an expert in the
right? I mean, yeah?
It's used,
Is it a tried and true technology? I mean, it's,
hospitals use it.
A lot of my clients
Well,
are
I mean-
putting it in their homes.
I'm hanging on, again, the guarantee. They're guaranteeing us a system that works, whatever it takes, through the life of the contract. So, if it breaks, they have to fix it type thing.
let's say this heat pump technology wasn't around, and we weren't concerned with decarbonization. How would this issue get fixed? I mean, you'd have to fix the building envelope, all the ceiling issues and all that, but beyond that, what would be done? Did they offer any other like lower tech solutions besides?
Well, so that's just it, I think, is the lower tech solutions still cost more because you couldn't even tie incentives to them. So, again, that was all put together,
The incentive is for the heat pump, and specifically not.
and the grant was to decarbonize, so,
Well, I mean, look, Eversource can provide these incentives because of what they're doing to all our consumers in the state, in our area. you know?
and so that's where we play this card. and
That's,
say
they're
looking at
taking
solar.
advantage of people big time. It's outrageous, right? I mean, we're all being affected by it with these ridiculous delivery charges. And, at some point, there's gonna be a tipping point at some point here.
I guess my concern would be, would it have made sense if we put a more expensive project forward with a different solution? And what would the answer be?
More expensive? No.
Right.
But that's what they were more
So
expensive.
how would,
How much more expensive was like the alternative?
I don't know those figures off the top, but we can definitely put them
Like,
together.
what were the alternatives?
What were the alternatives,
What were the
Yeah,
alternatives
it was
that were-
AC, it was upgrading all of those air conditioning units, making sure, they were robust enough to handle it. We talked about the deck, I've kind of botched the word, the decusant, to combat the humidity, and that was, there's no existing systems to tie that into, so that would have had to been built out, essentially new.
What is the time frame on this, and is it affected by the fact, for example, we just saw the federal government claw back money from various entities. Is this program and the money you're getting from the grants going to be affected at all if the federal government's going to claw back money, or the state government's going to claw back money, and those programs are no longer available?
So the Green Communities Grant is a state grant, that there's no trickle down from federal as far as I understand. When I asked that question, it's strictly Massachusetts. And then the Eversource incentives, as far as I'm aware, once they're guaranteed, they're guaranteed.
So they're in the hook once.
Yeah, we can, I imagine again, that all comes into contract play, and then fixed firm pricing, no matter what happens, once we sign the contract for a certain amount, the equipment can triple in price, and guess what, we don't owe $1 more than what we agreed to.
Patrick, the $70 to $80 per year on, $450,000 house, is that counting in the maximum incentive?
No, that was worst case scenario.
That was worst case scenario.
4.2.
Okay, so.
And again, that's in year one, where the principal is obviously significantly higher than all the other years, so.
Okay.
And we're looking at potentially a $600 to $800 reduction, $800,000 reduction if these other grants come to fruition, right?
Right, and then there's another one that we've actually put a letter of interest in, or I can't think of the term, I'm sorry, it's late all day, but that grant's coming on the horizon too, and we're gonna be eligible to apply to that to drive the cost down even more. Again, it's just the nature of the direction, that the state's going, that the utilities are incentivizing, and we're gonna try to capture as much money as we can to have the most cost-effective project to address the issues that we have.
I mean, these are all questions that'll probably come up in a public hearing when we have them.
Absolutely, yeah.
And we're hoping to have them by then.
We're anticipating one in March and one in April.
So my next question is, I know we had talked about having a joint meeting with the Board of Selectmen, right?
Yeah.
So when do you want to try and coordinate that?
I was going to ask that question as well, because I know the moderator released a schedule saying that was going to happen in February, and I don't know who,
That was the original one we were going for the May town meeting. Now it's a June 2nd town meeting. But you also have to get over the hump of the April 22nd election. And that means all your language and everything else has to be vetted to be put on the ballot. And so that's something we need to talk to Pam about.
Yep, and we talked about deadlines for that, but I guess for the meetings, I mean, I know we all have a lot of meetings, so it's really just communicating to plan it when it can work for everybody. We're ready, we have the information, with the exception of the Eversource incentive, which we hope for in a week, and then the Green Communities Grant, which hope for any day now, really. But the project and the details of the project won't change.
The election can be before any town meeting vote. So you can have the election first. You just have to have the town meeting within so many days of an election.
Is it the 30?
Huh?
Is it 60?
It's either 60 or 90 depending on that, so I'll default to 60.
And again, that's not my expertise, and that's why I have phone calls with, Mr. Kelly, the moderator, the clerk, whether it's support for the project or not, the logistics need to be supported so that we can either put something forward to let the community decide on, but that takes a collaboration with all of us,
And we've talked to town council, school council, and bond council. They're ready to go once they see the language to either approve it or rewrite it for it to be submitted in the April 22nd election.
yeah, to the point where bond counsel has even played 4 different scenarios of this figure, reducing it by a $250,000 to see what the impact would be, so that we're prepared, once these incentives come into play, to change that tax impact.
I think, being able to tell the residents potentially how much it's gonna add to the property tax bill, with the incentive, will be a key, going forward. Because the thing after this, the big one is gonna be this Old Colony issue, which is gonna, this is gonna look like peanuts. This is gonna look like peanuts adding on to the property tax compared to what that is gonna be for our residents. So that's why we have concerns with what the cost of this project is gonna be.
Absolutely, as you
And
should.
we're just trying to do our due diligence, and, it's gonna be tough, with what they're doing.
And to the point made earlier today, we still have the general fund to balance for fiscal '26 too. What does that look like?
But yeah, and we don't want our school, either school, to start going down the tubes even more, to the point where, because we can't afford to build a new school. I mean, people need to know that too. So,
It's a challenging time.
it is. So going back to meeting date, because I know we want to try and meet with the Board of Selectmen, right?
Yep.
So our FinCom, we were gonna meet, not next week, but the 26th, we were gonna handle some easy budgets that are no-brainers. We could actually probably push that out ahead, and then maybe try and do a joint meeting with the Board of Selectmen on February 26th, possibly.
They'd have to talk to the chair on that.
Who's chairing the Board of Selectmen now? Okay.
Yeah,
All right, I'll reach out to Bob.
because they've got a meeting with a number of things on it for the 25th that have to be done.
Okay, so maybe maybe they could do the 26th then.
Dr., would you want to do that partial steering committee on that same day prior to a joint meeting?
On a Wednesday, I wouldn't be able to. I'd have to leave work early.
Okay.
Because if we meet on the 26th for this joint meeting, it would be like at 7 o'clock.
Right.
At the middle school, I'm assuming, because we need more room.
Yeah. I'm just trying to get a date too for the
That's right, yeah.
steering.
So
Yep.
Patrick had asked me in an email what your availability would be to attend, like a budget subcommittee meeting.
What day of the week are we looking at?
Right now, we're scheduled for the 25th.
25th.
We could do it at any time.
I could be available on the 25th.
Okay, perfect.
Yeah, the 25th
What
is,
time?
Yeah, what time?
5:30?
What works for you?
No, I can't be available.
No?
Selectmen are meeting.
So what time? I mean, we can push it
They move-
3 o'clock.
We can make it earlier.
Yeah, it would have to be, because
I'm available all afternoon.
I could do
they're at 4.
Do we want to do this off?
As long as one.
Selectmen start at
What about 3 o'clock?
4. Is an hour enough time?
I can do 3 o'clock. I don't think so.
2:30, 2
Sue
o'clock?
can.
2 o'clock.
2 o'clock would be better.
That's,
what about Sue?
Yeah.
yeah, it'd have to be later. I've got a meeting at 2. I typically go into Boston, I can try and move that to work from home, but I can't change a 2 o'clock meeting that I have. So, 3 or 3:30 would be the earliest that I could join.
3.
3 o'clock.
It would have to be 3, and where would it be?
In my conference room?
Because
Do we
you
have it here?
You can,
Okay,
Here?
doesn't matter to me.
but then we just
She
have
said
to
it
go back to
wrong.
the budget subcommittee, right?
Because then we could go right down
Because you
to,
meet at 4:30.
we meet at 4,
Oh, the Board of Selectmen, okay.
so, but down there, so
Yeah,
if
I mean,
it's
we could
here.
also,
We could come.
you could also do a spiel of the finances and get all the two.
3 o'clock. I might be a couple minutes late, because I gotta pick up Dylan, and then
Okay.
go home, and then come here.
Okay.
Okay.
So 3 o'clock here for the steering.
On the 20th.
Well, no, that's the budget subcommittee. That's like we do every year with Mike
Oh.
and Sue.
Okay, I thought we were talking about the steering.
She is correct.
You were, but I hijacked. more than I hijacked because we talked about this previously.
I thought we were combining.
You were talking about the budget, and she said, do we want to add the
The
steering
steering
in?
committee for the 26th, then she went to the
What's the steering
25th. I said, no, that was when we had the budget, so.
What's the
So I'm
steering
confused,
committee?
what are we doing on the 25th? What are we doing in budget?
What's the steering
I have
committee?
3,
Steering committee was the initial committee that we sort of put together to share details on the project before it went to the full group, so.
This
Mike had
project-
attended, Mr. McGlynn had attended, and
This-
some,
this
yes. Mr. Hinckley was in attendance.
ETA president.
Yeah.
We had actually a couple of teachers
Yeah.
on that. So 3 o'clock, 25th, budget subcommittee,
Here.
here. Yep, oh, sure.
That's, I gotta put that here too, because I'll have it drive to
What
the
is this
school.
Town conference room?
Selectmen's conference room.
Oh,
Is that this one?
Just gonna put down all these.
No, that's the
so we
selectmen's
don't have a
meeting.
date then for the steering
Correct,
committee.
we do not.
That's the FinCom conference room.
Add.
All right, potentially Wednesday, the 26th,
We
for a
could do
joint,
that.
for a joint meeting with the Board of Selectmen, but I'm gonna have to reach out to Bobby Hinckley.
Yeah, and I want to make sure both Train and Beacon can be present for that too.
All right, so that's
And we're
up in
looking
the
at-
air.
7 o'clock,
Yeah.
that?
Beacon Integrated Solutions is our consultant.
I'll put possible
Yeah.
joint meeting.
Are we
So
doing
is Kathy
steering room too?
And are you doing the joint meeting at the
Yeah.
school? Or,
Yes.
Generally we have,
because there's one room there.
Yeah, we can do it at the school.
So the 26th is gonna be the school, as long as everybody can participate? Okay.
I'm still gonna block it off, 7 o'clock.
7 o'clock on the 26th. And then do we want to come up with a date for this steering committee?
I defer to Mr. Boucher. Anytime between now and the 26th, really.
So that would be, it'd have to be like next week, right?
I'm done.
You're gone?
This is a vacation.
Yeah, FLA?
I will be.
Yeah.
Unless we just put out, extend an invitation to the steering committee to
To be
come,
present at that meeting.
to be present at the joint meeting, so they can listen
Yeah,
to
let's,
it at the same
let's
time.
discuss off camera.
Yeah, because they could be sitting in the audience.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, so it'll be like an all-in-one
Right.
kind of thing, just
Yeah.
condense it all at once. I think
Yes.
that's a good
I'm
idea.
all for efficiency.
I'm off.
Yeah.
Yeah, meetings don't always do.
Yeah,
Alright, so we'll do that then for the steering,
Yes.
okay.
Yeah, I'm getting older, I got a lot of doctor's appointments now, so.
Those rates are going up too. So those rates are going up too.
That's right, true, this is true. All right, so we get that hammered out, because then we have, we have to figure out when we're gonna, because we're gonna do what, 2 public outreach hearings?
We're aiming for a public hearing in March and then one closer to the ballot date in April.
Okay. And that would be at the Ford Middle School Gymnasium, I'm assuming, right?
Yeah, and that's not necessarily a joint meeting, obviously,
Right.
but, you know, we could talk
Okay.
about the logistics, maybe what would be.
That'll be
some
open to the
sort of-
public.
Yeah,
And you'd have what, representatives from Train and
And-
Beacon
yeah, absolutely.
there,
At both events.
Yep.
giving a presentation.
Hopefully have all the facts, you know, dialed in 100% by then, including, you know, help with the assessor on the tax rate and the allocations.
Okay.
Patrick, sorry, one question, right?
Sure.
So what we were talking about, going back to the combo where this doesn't necessarily fix the issue with the leaks, right? When are we gonna, that's not dead, right? How do we, what's next steps on that side?
Next step on that side is I'm trying to afford the $40,000 design bid build fee without
Okay.
asking for the money, because then if I can pay for that and say, see, it's gonna cost $100,000, we're gonna have to ask for that $100,000 somewhere. So,
Is there anything we can do about reaching out to our reps, state reps or anything to help out with that kind of thing?
we can certainly try, but generally I don't see things move fast enough.
Well, you guys, so-
Yeah, if there's money to be found.
I've invited him to a FinCom meeting, so I'm just waiting.
So we don't know, we don't have
Well,
any guess yet on that.
you have one state rep that is very familiar with the problem, I would assume.
How we get to it, those who,
Yeah.
I don't know, again, it'd be helpful, are there reserves to tap into to afford that service, to know what the problem is and afford, the consultation to get to the amount that we need, to know if it needs to be an article or if it's again, another reserve somewhere.
Could you use the school property, school building rental?
That was what I was planning on right now at this
What's the
time.
balance in that?
It's over 100. I want to say it was like around 120.
Sorry, what, Christine?
School property,
So
school building
use.
rental, facility use, so I mean.
So we have 120,000 in that?
Yeah, something.
And what could those funds be used for?
So they're used for things like purchasing the dehumidifiers in the classrooms when it wasn't budgeted for, and ESSER funds were used up. We use it for oddball fixes when, instead of coming to the town to ask for capital.
So that sounds like,
we do a lot of
so
it.
that sounds like it falls within that
But yeah,
description.
Right, but again, you don't want to deplete that fund entirely, because then, when you have a break, we have to go ask for free cash for it instead, it doesn't always work, so it's almost like our own personal reserve.
It's like a revolving fund.
It is a revolving
revolving
fund, yeah. And the goal was to build it up enough that we can sustain projects through it,
Right, a few years ago, it was used to do the playground at the elementary school, things like that, like extra things that aren't in the budget.
And just on that note too, we compared our fees to the neighboring districts just a couple of years ago and upped our rates to be more competitive so that we can continue to kind of build that fund up for when we need to, so. We've been doing our due diligence there.
Do you still have the collaborative classrooms? Because I know that was a
We do,
good
yep,
source
so that
of
rental,
revenue.
they really cut back services though. I think they went from $30,000 a year to $9.
Oh, gee.
Yeah.
They're having trouble finding staff.
That's too bad, because that was a nice
It was.
revenue source.
Right, and then again, there's a happy medium that, you don't want to charge these youth groups that are a part of our town exorbitant fees that get passed on to the families anyway, so, there's a balance there.
Right, so that's why the collaboratives were nice, but it's too bad.
Okay, does anybody have anything else to add? I don't want to keep these folks here any longer, they've had a long day, just like we all have.
Yeah.
Is there any old business to discuss?
No, sir.
New business? No new business. Okay, next meeting date tentatively will be Wednesday, February 26, 2025, at the Ford Middle School joint meeting, Finance Committee, School Department, School Committee, and Board of Selectmen, if we can pull it all together. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
We are adjourned.